I was born and raised in a very small town in Iowa, only about 200 residents. There were only 12 kids in my grade in school. We had one teacher for 2 classes. Pretty idyllic setting, very Grant Wood-like. I would later attend Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. The things that took place in the turbulent early 1960s had a lasting effect on me. John Kennedy's election and call for public service, his assassination, the Civil Rights Movement, the March on Washington, the Cuban Missile Crisis, even Bob Dylan's music, songs like The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll, The Times They Are Changing. They helped form my future. So much so that during the second semester of my junior year in 1965, I attended a historically black college in Little Rock, Arkansas, Philander Smith College, as part of an exchange program between the institutions. And in my January term in 1966, I went to Birmingham, Alabama, to take part with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and a voter registration drive. When I returned, I applied and was accepted to the Peace Corps. I was assigned to Tanzania, East Africa. My training was at Syracuse University. I was assigned to work in their village settlement program, Ujamaa villages, as the Tanzanian government worked on modernization. I found myself in a new settlement in the forest in western Tanzania, living in a tent where the agricultural center was being developed. I wasn't a field worker. I worked on organizational and management issues. The village was located on Stanley's route to find Dr. Livingston. Ujamaa was an interesting national planning approach to economic development. It was an attempt to bring public infrastructure to a central location where people could move from subsistence to modern agriculture. The work was really my first foray in planning and development that I eventually made my career. After Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King were assassinated and with the Vietnam War raging, I considered staying for another tour in the Tanzania put an end to that when they informed us that the Peace Corps was no longer welcome there. We had to leave at the end of our tours. I returned to the States after 2 years and moved to St. Louis, Missouri. That's where I met my future wife, Sally. I worked with a group and started an inner-city program tutoring disadvantaged youths. In 1971, we moved to Oklahoma for master's degrees. That's where we got married. Our shared interest in traveling took us overseas for a teaching job in Alexandria, Egypt. During our first year there in 1973, Egypt attacked Israel in what Egypt calls the October War. In the U.S., it's called the Yom Kippur War. Alexandria wasn't in the war zone, but we had blackout windows and couldn't drive at night. We could hear the shelling from our residence. Our second year there, we were able to travel a lot, and we did. Upper Egypt, Bahrain, Lebanon, Syria. Back then, Beirut and Damascus were wonderful places to visit. When we returned to the U.S. in 1975, I started a PhD program in geography at Syracuse University, a place where much of my later life started. Sally taught the freshman English program. Our daughter Jessica was born in 1976. We, including 2-year-old Jessica, went to Africa again, to Kenya this time, in 1978, where I did research as a Fulbright Fellow. Our son Christopher was born in 1979. We moved to Hamilton in 1981. I've lived here longer than any other place. I served as planning director for Madison County for many years, working in land use planning, affordable housing, environmental issues, economic development, all things that were the focus of my PhD. The last few years with the county, I was deeply involved in land settlement negotiations with the Oneida Indian Nation. I was also promoted to county administrator. Sally was diagnosed with dementia in 2005, which pretty much changed our future plans. I retired to become her caretaker. I didn't stop, however, being involved with local activities and various planning and development boards. After her diagnosis and my retirement, I opened a new chapter in my life through buying and selling books. My son had become a book dealer, and I began researching and finding antiquarian books for him to sell. Over time, I started to buy and sell books myself and eventually started selling online and became a vendor in several local antique stores. Something I could do with Sally, and I enjoyed it. I also started to collect books. My collection's a little unusual because I'm not collecting authors. I collect books whose covers have been designed by Margaret Armstrong. They're all decorative covers published in the late 19th and 20th and early 20th century. Very attractive and distinctive. Sally's been in a nursing home since 2016 and survived longer than most Alzheimer's patients, almost 20 years after her diagnosis. Her disease has always been a struggle for our family, and it's not over yet for either her, for me, or for our children. That pretty much brings me to where I am today. There are a number of twists and turns in my life. I'm still in the book business and still active on a number of boards. At 78, I'm not sure what's next.